Gonna give you a little look at the Soundcore 3. Is a speaker you have been asking me a lot about. Gonna compare it with the Maxsound Plus, but guys, on a serious note, I would like to say it is World Mullet Day. Taking a few minutes out just to think of a world without the mullet and how lucky we are. We have indeed got the mullet in our lives. So I'm going to get on with the Soundcore 3. As I said, to me, the most obvious speaker to compare it to is the Tribit Maxsound Plus. For me, it's the champion at around the £50 and lower mark. Happens to be around the same price, actually a little bit cheaper. When I checked this morning, Soundcore 3, £53, Maxsound Plus, just £45. I have seen a lot of people like to compare this to JBL Flip 5. Well, that's £120 speaker. I'm not quite sure what that's all about, other than, yes, I've just turned it on, other than they are very similar sizes. Well, to me, Maxsound Plus is quite a similar size, although I do prefer the form factor, the squarer, more dinky in the hand form factor of the Soundcore 3. Just to let you know, it does come with a little, it looks like half a shoestring, to be absolutely honest, but I guess they'd call it a wrist strap. But to me, that is exactly the same as plimsoll shoestring, and you can thread it through there. You've got a little wrist strap, if indeed that's what you want. You can do a similar thing on the Maxsound Plus. It does have a little area there for a wrist strap. You also, of course, get USB 3 connector on the Soundcore 3. It's an older speaker, the Maxsound Plus. Don't get USB-C. Before I get onto the specs, I'm going to give you an idea what to expect. Frequency response measurements. Soundcore 3 default mode, as you can see, pretty bass light, big roll off, 300 Hz down. Obviously, it's not the biggest speaker in the world, but that's pretty significant. The difference between 300 Hz and up and 300 Hz and below. It's not just that the difference is at 300 Hz, 2.5 kHz and up. It's on the rise with a big peak, 11 kHz. That peak does reduce a little bit as you got the volume scale. Now, of course, we've got the app. We can fix that bass, can't we, in the EQ. I thought I'd see exactly what the headroom was. I just pushed 80 Hz plus 8 dB and 150 Hz plus 8 dB, maxing them out. And that does fill out the bass really nicely at 40% volume and at 60% volume. But there's no free lunch. By the time you're hitting 80%, it's still rolling off, and at 100%, you're still rolled off. And that's not the whole story. If we go A-B, can you see what's happening at that high end? If you add the bass, they're nicking from the high end. So you do get more bass. You're losing a bit of that peak, which you may or may not want to happen. So the potential to flatten out the frequency response is clearly there. The downside is by the time you hit maximum volume, it's not making any difference anyway. So the Maxsound Plus, it's noticeable how the volume steps are very different. You start off with a lot more volume, but you have less adjustment. Maxsound Plus, Soundcore 3. Maxsound Plus, as you can see, with X-Bass on, but no messing about in the app because there isn't an app. It's nicely flat, nicely neutral up to 60-70%. But yeah, you're getting some bass roll-off by the time you hit 80% and a lot of roll-off by the time you hit maximum volume. So even with bass completely pushed, the frequency response charts say it still can't compete ultimately in the bass department with Maxsound Plus. But what actually happens in real-world tracks can be completely different. I should mention measurements were done with a bass up on the Soundcore 3. Now, all these Soundcore speakers are coming with bass up technology. Sounds absolutely fantastic. I've not had a Soundcore 3 where I'd want to turn it off. To me, it's more of a bass cut. If you turn it off, some people do mess about with the bass up. I just leave it on because to me, that makes the most sense. In terms of comparing the two speakers, there's no app with the Maxsound Plus. They just tune it to be quite nice out of the box. Soundcore now seem to like to give you a little bit of headroom in their speakers. Then you can go into the app and mess about with the sliders. That's what I've done in this video. I did in that frequency response measurement. I wanted to see exactly what the headroom was. I've gone +8, +8. I have to tell you, in my actual comparisons, I will go +8, +5. I found that was the best trade-off because it can become a little bit woolly. I've not pushed the high end. It already has a peak around 11, 12 kilohertz. There was no need to push it without really wrecking the sound. And also, as soon as you push up the bass, it does do things at the high end. It's going to get a bit complicated. There's no free lunch. They're going to start messing about to give you a balance, but the slider's not doing exactly, again, what you think. Now, in terms of, I said, £53 versus the cheaper Maxsound Plus and the older Maxsound Plus, £45, came out in 2019, July 2020. Now, the interesting bit is the battery. Everywhere I'm reading, the specs of the battery for the Soundcore 3 say 7.4 volts, 3,350 milliamps. What I like to do is tell you what they are in watt hours. It makes more sense. That would be 24.7 watt hours. When I go into the manual for the Soundcore 3, still says what it had in the older Soundcore 2, which is 7.4 volts, 2,600 milliamp hours, converts to 19.2 watt hours. So, don't know if the manuals, I did try and find a teardown. I couldn't find a teardown. So, to be absolutely honest, this is either the same as the old one, 19.2 watt hours, or 24.7 watt hours. And I'm sure you guys are way more clued up than me. You're going to give me the comments in my comment section. Surprise, surprise. Tell me exactly what this is. But at this point, I couldn't, having a reasonably quick look, I couldn't actually find something that is definitive, where they've taken the battery out and they can say that's what the battery is. It's 16 watt hours, so it's a smaller battery either way in the Maxsound Plus. It's Bluetooth 4.2, it's Bluetooth 5 on the newest speaker. Now, obviously at this price range, they are both SBC codecs. Now, no wireless, no TWS, no true wireless stereo playing with either of these speakers. Now, I say that because, well, I already knew you couldn't do that with the Maxsound Plus. I did think by now they'd come out with a new model where they give you stereo pairing. I don't know why they've never done that. They had a little classic on their hands and they've not really pushed the boat out and given us a new model, Bluetooth 5, same neutral sound, but you could pair a stereo pair to them. Now, Partycast. Again, reading other people's write-ups, some people do talk about, oh, and you can pair them in stereo. I don't see anywhere. I've never had a Partycast that actually worked for me in stereo. As far as I can see, Partycast is about pairing 100 speakers as we do all the time, as you know, but being able to have two of them in stereo. So as far as I can see, and in my personal experience, if it says TWS, you get stereo pairing, you can only pair two of them. When it's been Partycast, I've not had a Partycast where I could pair two of them in stereo. Now, I haven't had a pair of Soundcores for a little while, so I can't really test that other than the Soundcore Mini, which didn't work in stereo. As I said, I see people making comments that you can have Partycast speakers and, incidentally, on the Soundcore 3 stereo. I can't see anywhere that backs that up. Even if you go into the manual, it just shows you how to connect multiple speakers. It says nothing about true wireless stereo pairing. So for me, no stereo pairing. Also doesn't have an auxiliary because it's not the modern way, but we do have an auxiliary input. That alone would be, for a lot of people, a reason to buy the Maxsound Plus. Neither of them will work as a power bank. Both of them can be used as a phone speaker for making phone calls. Big difference here on rated power, 24 watts rated versus 16 watts, was 12, wasn't it, on the Soundcore 2. So power rating is up 16 watts, but still on paper can't match the cheaper Maxsound Plus. In terms of weight, 505 grams versus 595 grams. Can you tell the difference? No. To me, they're both quite lightweight. Not no weight, but lightweight travel speakers. I like the more rubberized and square form factor on this, but I think in terms of weight, it's about even, but on paper, Maxsound Plus is a little bit heavier. Now, when it comes to using me in the swimming pool, yes, IPX7 for both of them can be dropped into up to a metre of water for 30 minutes. However, if you drop that in the pool, it floats, albeit with the drivers down. If you drop that in the pool, it will sink to the bottom. It doesn't float at all. Slightly bigger drivers on the Maxsound Plus. 245mm woofers versus 238mm woofers. Both have passive radiators and both really poor in terms of Bluetooth latency, if you're thinking of as a YouTube speaker, for me, really poor. How poor? Well, 160, 180 milliseconds for both of them. So, as I said, those are my custom EQ settings, but I will compare the Maxsound Plus against both Soundcore 3 in default mode and in custom mode, around 55% volume.
You won't catch me feeling blue, not over you. I guess I let my own self down, thinking that you come around. Got better things to do. Won't catch me feeling blue, not over we gonna drive all night. We gonna drive. We gonna drive all night. We gonna drive. We gonna drive all night. We gonna run all the red lights. So baby, turn it up. Wanna feel that rush, yeah.
Soundcore 3 in default mode. You ask yourself why? Why, when there's still plenty of headroom, do they tune it like that? I can't answer, but very, very bass light in default mode. Go into the app, take a few minutes to stick the bass up. It starts to get close to the Maxsound Plus. Now I say close, it can match the mids, it can match the upper bass. But when we're talking low bass on these 60, 50 hertz, the Maxsound Plus simply digs deeper, even when you try and max out the bass on the Soundcore 3. Also, the Maxsound Plus for me is a little bit of a bigger soundstage. Not surprising. It's got the bigger drivers. I should mention titanium drivers. This is the big marketing buzzword now for Soundcore. We've got titanium drivers. Does it make it go faster? Does it make it do amazing things? The clue is in the comparisons. I still think I would say the Maxsound Plus with non-titanium drivers amazingly still manages to hold its own, and it's cheaper. So I have been accused of working for Soundcore. I went from the Motion Plus pound for pound world champion to the Motion Boom pound for pound world champion. Soundcore have been making some great speakers. However, for me personally, at 50%, this has been a disappointment. I was expecting a little bit more. given the value they've been giving us, and given that a lot of people like this speaker. A lot of people are kind of raving about this speaker. I don't know if they've had the Maxsound Plus or not, but to me, everything's very similar between them, except that it's a bigger soundstage on the Maxsound Plus, and it can dig deeper. So really want to know, okay, louder, go louder. 80% volume listening comparison test.
In the class and they could smell it from a mile, but I got away in time before the teacher could find out. Ringing when my neighbors police chased us into town. Never took the easy route, but you could just look around. Wasted youth, late for school. Keep my shoes untied, it's cool. Break your stupid rules into it. If I get caught, I'll play the fool. Throw out my whole plate of food just to meet up with my crew. I said I'll be back at 10, but now it's 2:15. I made it out alive by the grace of God. Couple broken bones, couple scrapes and scars. Summer nights at midnight, looking at the stars. Back before I ever knew I'd make it this far. Family broke apart, I know it felt so hard. I remember running around in my front yard. It still feels like yesterday, but it's hard to keep the pace of that clock. I was up to mischief, now I'm glued on my phone. Looking out the window on a long ride home. I'm wondering to myself these days, where does all the time, where does wasted youth, late for school. Keep my shoes untied, it's cool. Break your stupid rules into it. If I get caught, I'll play the fool. Throw out my whole plate of food just to meet up with my crew. I said I'll be back at 10. Now it's 2:15. Beat us, you made us stop, now you're late for the border. It's cause it's taking you 20 minutes to order. So when it's making you cry, here's my shoulder. You know you treated like shit, so I told her girl, you know he's better now. If he's mad, don't matter now. Now it's better to help him cause of you. Now he's mad at you, so dumb. Now you're through, you're welcome. Girl, I don't mean to be stealing, but I can't help myself. You know I got all these feelings and I can't check myself. Way he treated you, that shit was madness. And now you're with me every day, that shit is magic. Whoa. And every time I can see you lying on Instagram, but every day I'll be showing you, girl, just who I am. Now I got a picture of a sad boy, cause he be crying over what he could've had, boy. Girl, you know he's better now. If he's mad, don't matter now. Now he's better to help him cause of you, you're welcome. Now he's mad at you, so dumb. Now you're through, you're welcome.
Maxsound Plus, Soundcore 3 default mode. You can see outside of the bass, they have a pretty similar sound signature, but default mode against the Maxsound Plus, the difference in that bass is massive, enough to change the whole overall sound signature to your ears. At 75 Hz, we're actually 6 dB down on the Soundcore 3. Of course, you've got to go into the app. You have to set custom mode, and when you set custom mode, the gap narrows, but depending where you are on the volume scale, the difference is still there. Now, at 60 Hz, at 75-80% volume, they're about the same. But at 85 Hz, Maxsound Plus, 3 dB louder, and upper bass, about the same. You just get a little bit less high-end when you go to custom mode, even though you're only pushing the bass in the app for the Soundcore 3. And there are a few more dips. If we look noticeably, 7 kHz, that dip there, more pronounced than the Maxsound Plus. And again, around 120 Hz, Soundcore 3 dropping off quite noticeably. There's less of a drop-off on the Maxsound Plus. So, similar sort of thing. For me, it's quite close. They have a similar sound signature, except that it goes a bit deeper on the Maxsound Plus. But the vocals sound very similar. The mids, the highs sound very similar. Just think, it's close, but the bigger soundstage kind of, and the deeper bass does it for me with Maxsound Plus. Now, you can almost match that when you push custom mode. However, the downside of pushing the bass, yes, you get more bass. Yes, it makes more sense, but it's not a tight bass by any means. It can sound woolly and out of control. Kind of what people say is maybe a bit of a farty noise, a bit port-like noise, not ported, but a port-like noise. Just, I would call that woolly and out of control, not very bass-like, except that the frequency is clearly that of a bass. So that's the downside. Doesn't do it with all tracks, doesn't do it all the time, but it has a tendency, much like when I pushed my Soundcore Flare 2. It just gets very, very what I call woolly and out of control. So ultimately, what can they do? Maximum volume.
That's got me doing crazy things. It's just, that's got me up here in the ceiling. It's just, I'm throwing cash like it's nothing. It's just, I wish that I could go and touch it. It's just, that's got me doing crazy things. It's just, that's got me up here in the ceiling. It's just, I'm throwing cash like it's nothing. It's just, I wish that I could go and touch it. It's just sexuality. You're sending out causing disruption. The police can't even stop it. If they try, we gotta jump in. I hope you do not mind me watching from behind. It's you I like, it's you I like. I'm chasing one more time. This is party life. I'm chasing Flores in the building, and they keep on moving to the rhythm we love. Home every woman with the girls you show. Now look at hers and look at hers. That's got me doing crazy things. It's just, that's got me up here in the ceiling. It's just, I'm throwing cash like it's nothing. It's just, I wish that I can go and touch it. It's just, that's got me doing crazy things. It's just, that's got me up here in the ceiling. It's just, I'm throwing cash like it's nothing. It's just, I wish that I can go and touch it. It's just, that's got me doing crazy things. It's just, that's got me up here in the ceiling. It's just, I'm throwing cash like it's nothing. It's just, I wish that I can go and touch it. It's just.
So ultimately, I don't think it's a surprise Maxsound Plus goes the loudest, but actually not by that much over default mode. Because the Soundcore 3 retains a lot of mids and highs, overall volume is not that different. The big difference is, see, the bass. Now, if you push the bass on the Soundcore 3, you can start getting closer to the Maxsound Plus, but you're losing that high end. As soon as you push the bass in the app, you're going to get a drop off at that high end. And ultimately, that means less volume, less clear sound, a bit muddy sounding. So near 2.5 decibels down in terms of actual volume on the Maxsound Plus in custom mode. And if you want volume, you're going to lose out in bass department on the Soundcore 3. At 80 Hz minus 36, that's 5 decibels down on the Maxsound Plus.
When you only push the bass in the EQ, in the Soundcore app, as you got the volume steps, the effect of that is that the speaker will start reducing those highs. You will gradually lose more and more clarity because of it. I guess helping to give it a more bass-like sound, but it's cheating by removing some of the high end. So when the default versus custom, when you've pushed the bass, there's a big difference in clarity as you got the volumes. So it is actually reducing that peak at the high end. By the time you hit maximum volume, it's actually sounding muffled. Yes, you've got more bass, but it's not clear. Whereas the Maxsound Plus is doing it all. Yes, they both roll off bass as you got the volume scales, as almost all these speakers do. They're just allowing you to go louder by saying, okay, we haven't got any more bass to give you, but you want to go louder, we'll give you the mids and the highs. But you're still getting clarity, you're still getting more, you're getting deeper bass. It can kind of match the mids and the upper bass, but it can't match, we're not going to say low-end wallop with a speaker like that, but there's, it's there. enough for you to kind of latch on and say, oh, that was in the track and that's not too bad. So still a neutral sounding speaker, a bit screechy as a lot of these speakers are as you get to maximum volume, but still retains clarity, still retains more bass than whether it's default mode or custom mode with the bass pushed on the Soundcore 3. And ultimately it goes louder. So I'm kind of scratching my head why a lot of people really like it. Look, it's not a bad speaker, and if I didn't have the Max, as I always say, almost all of my speakers outside of the Sony XB32, it's the only speaker you got, it's going to sound nice. You're listening to music, what's wrong with that? You're going to like it. It's just when you know what else you can get at the same price or the same size, in this case, the size and price. I can pay less, get more, which is why, you know, most of you guys are going, I'll see you on all the channels. I'll see you on all my YouTube travels. You know what's out there. And some of you, it's surprising me that you are kind of well in love with the Soundcore 3. Maybe it's my version of the Soundcore 3 can't match the Maxsound Plus, but for me, there is no reason outside of this. I like the form factor. It feels nicer in the hand, but when it comes to actual size, and it's not really taking up hardly anything. It's a fraction larger on the Maxsound Plus, not really taking up much room extra in a bag of notice. Why would you get the Maxsound? Why would you not get the Maxsound Plus? You could get the Soundcore Mini 3, other than, well, if you're in danger of losing it in the pool, that will sink to the bottom. Well, that will float on the top, and you can easily retrieve it. So I really like the look. I really like the feel in the hand. But in default mode, it doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they left it tuned like that. And in custom mode, you're losing the clarity as you got the volumes. It gets a bit woolly. So, you know, given the alternatives, I certainly couldn't recommend it. Or, you know, on the two speakers that I've got in front of me and listening to them. However, I hope you got something out of this video, that you got the information you're looking for. And of course, thank you for watching.